Can you really call it exercise if you can scroll your phone while doing it? Mack Engel, Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Engel Angle podcast here on the Sunset Lounge. Thank you very much for joining me for an episode that has been years in the making. I actually recorded this interview last year and I kept sitting on it because the way I schedule these things is that there's a lot of flexibility. And I had it in the can along with several others that I currently do. And I thought, well, this one, I'll just wait and I'll just wait and I'll just wait. And I thought, I just need to do this now because this one is very special to me. This has a great deal amount of personal, sentimental value to me because I grew up with both of these guests. The first guest I'm going to name is Jake Query. I have known Jake Query since we were in the 6th grade together at Eastwood Middle School in Indianapolis, Indiana. The other guest is Adam Alexander, and I've known Adam since we were in juniors at North Central High School, also in Indianapolis, Indiana. The reason why this is so significant is that the three of us, Jake, Adam, and myself, all were in the same radio, TV, film department class, both as juniors and seniors when we were in high school together. And we did high school sports talk, high school radio for football games and basketball games and baseball games. And the three of us all went on to pursue this profession and we're still doing it. Jake, make sure I get this right, Jake is currently the host of his own sports talk show in Indianapolis, Indiana. You can hear Query and Company every day in the middle of the afternoon in Indianapolis. He's also one of the prominent voices of all IndyCar coverage, and you can hear him on the call for every Indy 500 race on the last Sunday in May. He's been a part of that, the IndyCar racing team coverage, for I think 20 plus years, and it was a childhood dream of his to be a part of that, and he is. He's done a lot of other things, and he's also a member of the North Central High School Hall of Fame. Adam is a member of the J. Everett Light Career Center Hall of Fame, and he's gone on, since we graduated from high school, to establish himself as probably the top play-by-play TV voice for NASCAR. And how he carved out this niche is really impressive and most unexpected. But if there's a NASCAR event or a NASCAR race on TV today, Fox Sports, TNT, Amazon, whatever, there's a 99% chance Adam is calling the race. They're great guys. I have a tremendous amount of pride in the fact that we grew up together and we've gone on to do what we're doing today. And, somebody might be listening and say, well, geez, Mac, what Hall of Fame are you in? I'm pretty sure one of those got lost in the mail. It's okay. Anyways, without further ado, please welcome my friends, Jake Query and Adam Alexander.
Could we get a screenshot of that look on Jake's face?
Jake, you're better at this than I am, although I'm decent at it. When was the last time you, myself, and Adam did an on-air piece of work, production? I think I know what it is.
Boy.
Do you know it?
Did you do anything with the All-Star game with us, Mac?
No, I didn't do anything with the All-Star game that I recall. I've got another game in mind that the three of us worked together, but it's been a long time.
I mean, probably something at Blast-Off would be my last guess, but...
The last time I can recall the three of us did work together was our senior year of high school, so that would have been spring of 91. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Spring of 91. And Adam, you were calling the play-by-play for North Central High School boys basketball at Hinkle Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. I think North Central made it to like the Sweet 16 or something. And then, Jake, you were the color guy. And I was Aaron Andrews. I was the sideline reporter.
So it was the sectionals. So they won the sectionals 66-52 over Arlington. And then they advanced to the morning game of the regionals against Southport and got beat. But Adam and I continued all the way through the semi-state at Hinkle, all the games at Hinkle, Adam and I continued to do. and we alternated quarters back and forth. I'll never forget. I was so envious of Adam because Greg Black hit like a half-court shot to end the first half in the game against Southport, and Adam had that quarter for play-by-play, and I was a terrible analyst. Adam was really, really good when he would do analyst stuff. I was terrible at it. And so I just remember Greg hit that shot and he got the call, and I was like, man, the shot of the year, and like Adam got to call it. But yeah, that's probably right, Mac, because you and I did football together when Adam was out there kicking 18-yard kickoffs, and we were calling the game. It's pretty awesome.
So I've wanted to do this for a while because I thought for the longest time the fact that the three of us went on to do this is pretty unique and rare, and the platform didn't really exist, so it exists now. And I'm really happy you guys both agreed to join me to do this because I've, like I said, this has been on my list for a while. I have a cheat sheet list of questions, but if anybody wants to jump in and add anything, feel free. So, Adam, I'm going to start with you. And you're obviously now doing great. I'm very proud of the success that you've had and you've earned, because I know you've earned it. So if somebody told the 18-year-old version of yourself that you're going to be where you are today and done what you have done professionally, what do you think you would have said at 18 about all this?
I'm sure I never would have believed it, just because everything really that's happened for me and the platform that has given me opportunity has been in NASCAR. And I never really had that anywhere in my vision for the future. I mean, the three of us grew up primarily football, basketball. And because I played football in high school, I mean, I didn't even, get that experience. So I was mainly basketball when you look at, the opportunities that were put in front of us at such a young age to gain experience and all of that. And then even when I went on to college and did a lot of play-by-play, it was basketball. And then early in my career, I was doing the University of Evansville basketball. So mainly everything for me was basketball, and there was really no racing. And then I just got into NASCAR and racing by accident, and then the doors opened up. Now, there was an IndyCar component, and obviously Jake has made a great run on the racing side with IndyCar. So I probably, if I had to guess racing, it would have been, IndyCar and the Indy 500 and all of that. And there was a little bit of that in there for me. But the fact that everything that's worked out for me has been through NASCAR, I never could have imagined that.
Jake, what about you?
Along the same lines as Adam, really, in the fact that, look, guys, the reality is this. All three of us had, an unbelievable head start, right? Because we got the opportunity to do radio and television together. And I think the thing that's funny is, there was this natural competitiveness amongst all three of us, really. And I remember first meeting Adam sophomore year in high school in Miss Martin's English class. And I was like, who's the kid with the Purdue shirt on? He had on a Purdue shirt. He's got that damn banner behind him right now. And I remember, Adam was like myself, so outgoing that there was this natural competitive juice, because I was like, well, listen, this isn't the guy that's going to be the one that stands in the way, so to speak. And it didn't take long before we became, fast friends immediately. We just combined forces. And then the next year we did radio and television, and Mac, you were in there with me. So, I think all three of us knew that we had great advantage. Obviously, you have to have things open up before you, right? And you have to put yourself in position to be in position. And all three of us have had great people that have helped us along the way. So I always had the vision of it, Mac, truth be told. I think, and I was always afraid of how I would react if it didn't work out for me. But it was really just the being around the right people. That's what it was for me, a lot like what, Adam was saying. I will say, Mac, personally, and I was thinking about this before we came on, I think of the three of us, you actually, Mac, had the most impressive career because, when you grow up in Indianapolis, there's a natural tendency for people to kind of funnel you towards racing because the perception is there that you have been around racing a lot. And so I think that opens up doors. It has for me, certainly. I think it did for Adam as well. But for you, Mac, to go and have the career that you've had in a top 10 market where we had no footprint whatsoever. There's nothing that would have had any of us blazing any sort of a path in Dallas-Fort Worth. And to be able to do that and have the career you've had, I think actually amongst the three of us is the most impressive.
I am really bad with compliments. That really means a lot to me. I don't I don't know if I
you don't get them very often. So
no, I don't. That's true. No, but I thought about that when I asked you guys to do this. If you had told me at 18 that I would have done it, I don't think I had any. I think that was the problem, is that I didn't have any concepts of what any of this was. I didn't know how to do it. I knew how to try hard. I knew how to knock on doors and to ask and to be on time. That's what I knew how to do well. And the thing, when I've thought about this a lot, when I was a kid, and Adam, the three of us, I don't think any of us were great scholars. I struggled in school. I was a bad student. No, I was like a 2.0 student until my senior year, when I was terrified that I wasn't going to go to college. And until then, I wanted to do what you guys did. I remember I would practice calling games with the radio, with the TV on and the sound down. I would practice doing games. Jake, I don't think I've ever told Adam. I know I haven't told you this. So I was really excited when we went to radio and TV film. I didn't know what a career center was. I didn't know what a vocational school was. I thought every school had them. I didn't know that, the fact that we had one attached to our high school, that was unique. It didn't dawn on me. I was too just naive. So when the teacher, Mr. Hendricks, said, we're going to try out for sports radio play-by-play, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm good at this. And I was really confident and I was good at it. And Adam, I really didn't know you then. As a junior, I really didn't know you. So I didn't know what you were about. I knew you were on the team, so I knew you weren't a competitor. And the funny part is, I was really confident. And there was 5 of us who were going to be in the press box there for the freshman or 9th grade game or 8th grade game, whatever it was. We had to call it into a tape recorder. And I knew there was one guy. There was one guy I had to sweat. I knew it. But I knew I was good. I could sit down in the first quarter and I could hear myself against the other guys, and I was good. I knew I was for that age. I'm not Vin Scully. And then the guy I was worried about walks in. He was late because he had an excused absence, and he sits there at the end, 3 or 4 seats down from me, and I can hear him out of the corner of my eye, or corner of my hair, and I'm like, oh fuck! I was like, he's better than me, and it wasn't like I wasn't being hard on myself. It was more like saying, okay, you're 6 feet tall, and that guy's 7 feet tall. That guy, it's just a fact. And I could hear him, and I'm like, he's just better than me. And it was Jake. And so, he was just better at me than I was at it. And that was what I wanted to do. So I'm like, oh, now what? And Adam, only because you played did I get to do it. And I got to be Jake's color guy, which is ridiculous. And Jake, I want you to tell this story because there's specifics of it I don't remember. So you and I are calling those games. And for our age, we were way better than we should have been for that age. I really believe that. But I don't remember what got us in trouble. Like, Adam, you're playing, and then Jake, you and I literally get called to the principal's office on this. And I can't remember what it was that we said that prompted parents to call in and say, these guys have got to shut up.
I remember it.
Do you?
Okay, a couple of things. First off, of the 3 of us, I had I think this is correct because Adam played football. So I did Mack, you and I together in football season, and Adam and I in basketball season. Yep. So, and Adam, we had so much fun, right? Mack, we had so much fun. So yeah. I had the unique, of the 3 of us, I'm the unique one in the fact that I worked with both of you guys, right? Yeah. And I mean this sincerely. And obviously, for those that don't know, all 3 of us are still friends to this day, obviously, and still talk and everything else. But of all the things that I've been lucky enough to do in my career, I don't know that any of them that I've ever done it with people that I was more comfortable with and had more fun with than the very first, which was the both of you. Yeah. It was every single Friday and Saturday night. Adam was such a genius because Adam was the one that was like, for the basketball away games, we could ride the cheerleader bus.
That was the closest thing I had to a date with a girl in high school, by the way.
But let me tell you, I never knew that. Riding the cheerleader bus, and all the girls like, "Oh, they're so sweet!" It was the best, right? But we had so much fun. But Mack, to get to your point, Mack, our senior year, you were critical of the play calling of the head coach, the late George Pappas, and Dr. Eugene White, who was the principal at North Central at the time. I think Pappas had actually gone to Dr. White and said something about it. And so Dr. White called us down and sat us down and like played the clip and questioned our questioning. Primarily you. I was kind of a fly on the wall. And I'll never forget Dr. White saying, and I'll never forget it because you had this look on your face. Like Dr. White looked at you and goes, Mac, let me add the thing I need to ask you, Mac, you're on the radio, but did you ever play the game? I know you think you know a lot about it, but did you play the game? And Dr. White and
I remember that. I remember him saying, did you ever play the game?
But here's the thing. I always appreciated this. And I don't know if this is the case with George Pappas or not. Adam was played for him, so maybe he would know better. But I don't really think that they were mad. I don't really think they were offended by the power of the student radio station. But I think they saw that as an opportunity for us to learn the responsibilities that come with being responsible with a microphone. And, since then, Dr. White and I have a good relationship to this day. And I talk to him on a regular basis. And we've laughed about that story. And he's never confessed that that's exactly what that was. But I think that's what it was. I think it was their way of saying, and Adam, when you were the voice of the Aces, you have an understanding when you're in that position that there is a line that you don't cross. And I think it was important for us, Adam, to learn that at that age. And you and I, in that Southport game that we called, were so heartfelt about every call against North Central. And man, we painted our faces in our Wendy's bathroom on the way there. And we were so into it that it was important for our teachers to say, look, you guys have to basically be professionals here. Adam, I thought it was, at that time, a true foundation and a learning lesson for us.
Adam, since you're on television and you have a really high profile job, there are specifics in your career I don't know. How did you end up getting there from Indianapolis North Central High School to Southern Indiana in Evansville, and now you're probably the most prominent television figure for NASCAR television coverage? How did you get there?
So I left high school, went to Vincennes for 2 years, and Vincennes University had this unbelievable program when it comes to radio and TV and broadcasting. And it was the perfect stair step from all the experiences we had had at North Central, because, most four-year schools, you can't go in and get on the air right away. And VU did a nightly newscast, so I was a part of that. And they had multiple radio stations, and I actually worked at a radio station off campus when I was in college. So I was able to take that foundation we had at North Central, build on it at Vincennes. And then at the end of that 2-year period, it's like, what am I going to do now? Am I going to transfer, or am I going to go try and get a job? I knew what I wanted to do. I had no money. I'm like you, Mac. I was a horrible student. Radio TV at North Central and the J. Light Career Center saved my life. I don't know what I would have ended up doing, but I was literally qualified for nothing. And I had zero education beyond those 3 A's that I got for the 3 credit hours of the radio TV time. It literally saved me. And Vincennes was really the same thing, because college didn't interest me in the least, but I could go do, broadcasting. And so I went to Vincennes, and then I just started watching TV in Terre Haute and Evansville and trying to figure out, which one of these markets do I fit in with? Which station should I apply to? I got a job in Evansville and was doing TV locally there, and realized local TV wasn't for me. And I was ready to get out. But a friend of mine had talked me into doing some racing on the radio. And through that, met some people, did an audition with MRN Radio. And I was working for MRN doing NASCAR broadcasts. And you just meet people at the track. And there were a few people that were like, have you ever done TV? You ought to try to get on the TV side. And I'm like, well, actually, I have TV experience. And when they found out what my background was and that I had TV experience, there were just a few people that kind of jumped to my side and helped me get where I needed to be and got my tape in front of the right people. And then I did an audition on pit road doing a truck race, and they said, we're going to hire you. And then once I was in that cycle, because of some of the versatility I had that most people on that side didn't have, it just started opening up tons of doors. And, one thing led to another, right place, right time. And, that's kind of how it's all worked out.
When you were at Evansville, because I don't know if you remember, I was working as a intern in the Southwest Missouri State Athletic Department.
Oh, yeah.
And you remember that. And you and I, our paths crossed when you were at Evansville. And the play-by-play guy, I can't remember this specifically, but this is a terrible break to catch. Didn't the guy that you worked with and ultimately succeeded, didn't he take his own life, and that allowed you to take that job at Evansville?
Absolutely. So you know who that was, and was a huge mentor in my career, is Bob Buck, who was the younger brother of Jack Buck and the uncle of Joe Buck. And so Bob had, he had bounced around. He had done a lot of things at a high level and eventually landed in Evansville. And Bob was a real laid back. He was a low ego. He didn't need the big time. And so he had some family in that area, and that's what took him to Evansville. But I'll tell you a funny story. We were playing at Southwest Missouri State just before we lost Bob. And so 96, I believe it was like January of 96.
Yeah, I was there then. I remember that.
And Ed Sorensen came to the game because Steve Alford was coaching Southwest Missouri State. Jim Cruz, who's coaching Evansville, had brought, Steve Alford to IU. And so Ed Sorensen came from Indianapolis to do this story on the two of them reuniting and coaching against one another. And I remember when we were leaving the game, our SID, Bob Boxell, was standing there, and Ed Sorensen leaves the arena. And Bob Buck says to Bob Boxell, "Who was that?" And Bob Boxell said, "That was Ed Sorensen. He's a sports guy in Indianapolis, whatever." And I'm, I just thought Ed was the greatest thing ever growing up as a kid. And I know Jake had an unbelievable relationship with him. And I'm like, unbelievable, he was here. And Bob Buck says, I know him. I know Ed. We worked together. And Bob was one of those guys that had a story for everything. And, about half of it was true. And I'm like, you didn't know Ed Sorensen? That's a lie. I grew up with Ed Sorensen. You're lying. Well, we get back to the hotel, and we're sitting there at the bar, Bob Buck and I, and who shows up? Ed Sorensen. And he says, "Can I sit here?" And Bob Buck says, "Absolutely not. Beat it." And I'm like, and Ed Sorensen looks at Bob Buck and he says, Oh my gosh, Bob Buck, how have you been? And so they have this unbelievable reunion. And of course, Bob did know him. And so anyhow, it was amazing to me, the small world and how, so many in our industry are connected. But yeah, so Bob Buck was the play-by-play guy that I ultimately took over for when he passed away.
Jake, what about, I know obviously you and I have stayed in a lot more contact than Ab and I through no fault of anybody's, but you had a pretty interesting path because there hasn't been like Adams, from what I gather, has been more of this where you've zigzagged more and haven't really gone down, but you've zigzagged. So tell me how you got from A to B, where B is now.
Man, so it's funny that Adam mentioned Ed Sorensen. You guys know this, but when I was in the 6th grade, I picked up the phone one day, looked up the phone book. 269-1434 was the telephone number for Channel 6 Sports. And Ed Sorensen answered, "Sports." And I said, "Is this Ed Sorensen?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Man, I want to be a sportscaster." And I'll never forget, he said, "Buddy, everybody wants to be a sportscaster," and hung up. So I called right back and I said, "Hey, I have a question for you." And he said, "Okay." And I said, "If you went to a restaurant and the waiter was really rude, would you ever go back?" And he said, "Probably not. Why?" And I said, "Because I watch you every night and you just hung up on me. So why would I ever watch you again?" And he literally stopped.
You said that as a 6th grader to him?
Yeah, I'll never forget it. And so he stops and he says, "What is your name?" I said, "Jake Query." And he goes, "Hang on. So is it Jay Query or Jake Wary?" And I said, No, it's double consonant, Jake Query. So he said, "Well, why don't you have your parents?" So I told him I was a 6th grader at Eastwood Middle School. Anyway, fast forward, he basically said, "Why don't you come down tomorrow and have your parents bring you down?" And by the time I was a junior in high school, I had my own entry card into Channel 6, and I would just go down anytime that I had free time and just hang out down there. And after the shows, I would watch tapes with Ed and redo his sportscast and analyze stuff. And so I knew that, but then I didn't know how to get from here to there, right?
Yeah.
I had a long, circuitous academic career that was like you guys. And most of that was just lack of focus, lack of attention. I went to IU. I took an internship in New York City at MTV, which was a great experience to live in New York City. But I got out and basically just hung around the Channel 6 Sports office long enough that eventually they just gave me an hourly wage kind of startup producer job. Ed kind of created the position for me. And I just hung around long enough that I think they felt sorry for me. And eventually one day I remember he just said to me, he goes, "Look, are you going to send tapes out or what? Are you going to be here? Are you going to be here for 40 years? So he made me send out tapes to basically every television station in the country. And probably 3 weeks later, I had a message on my answering machine, and it was from Fox Sports Net in St. Louis. And they needed somebody to be a Midwest correspondent. And I moved to St. Louis 2 weeks later, and that kind of got the first door open for me. And then I went from there, came back to Indianapolis, worked more officially at Channel 6 for a while, then transitioned after about 8 or 9 years into radio at one of the radio stations in Indy. And I've been in radio ever since, doing some TV stuff as well. But, working for the flagship of IndyCar, that got me into the racing side of it. So it's been a long journey for sure. I'm sure, like you guys, there are times where I still wake up and think like, man, like, is this ever going to happen for me? Can I make a living at this? And here we are, and we're basically in the North Short shoot of our careers, right? I can't see the bricks yet, but pretty darn close.
Okay, it's break time. Got to do a little business here first. I want to make sure that everybody knows that all of the shows here on the Sunset Lounge are free. Free. That means Shippy and Groobs, the boys will make your day with satirical commentary on viral video clips, internet memes, social media, trending topics, sports, athlete celebrities, and pop culture. Clubhouse featuring Rob, Alex, and Don. They've had a very exciting summer because this has actually been a really good summer for movies. These guys are movie junkies. And this has actually been as good a summer as I can recall in a long, long time for big Hollywood movies. There's actually a good reason to go to the theater. Beer 30 Sports O'Clock. Ziggy will catch you up on all things sports and football. Football season has started, although a strong argument can be made that the Hall of Fame game does not count as real football. He'll also give you his best picks, and maybe you'll be dumb enough to believe that you can make money at sports betting. Al Maximo, my good friends Victor Villalba, pronounced that right. He was the Spanish voice of the Dallas Cowboys and Dallas Mavericks. He joins Mr. Carlos Nava, he of ESPN Deportes, for Al Maximo. That is our Spanish language show here on Sunset Lounge. I do not want to forget Mr. Norm Hitzkes has joined the Sunset Lounge, as well as Mike Reiner's Mr. Dark Companion. It is August, which means there are 2 more months of the Major League Baseball regular season yet to be played, which means there is 1 month left of minor league baseball. Because there's 1 month left, that means we have 1 more month of Sunset Lounge activity with the Frisco Rough Riders. 1 more month of Frisco Rough Riders baseball where you will see the Sunset Lounge gang at every Thirsty Thursday home game. Make sure you use our special code to take advantage of it, so you'll get a ticket preloaded with $6 good towards anything at the concessions. Drinks, nachos, or water. Go to ridersbaseball.com/specials. That's ridersbaseball.com/specials. Be sure to use the following code. Let's Ride 25. That's LETSRIDE 25. Let's Ride 25 to access the offer. You can join us for a drink in the Bull Moose Saloon as the game starts, or then, I'm not really sure that's a thing. You can spot us in the Lazy River there in the outfield. Maybe we'll be at the bottom of it, or in the stands, maybe just walking around the crowd. That's every Thirsty Thursday home game. Quench your thirst with the gang of the Sunset Lounge. And now, back to Jake and Adam. When we were young, we had this idea of what the job would be. And I think from what you guys are saying, none of us really had a specific destination in mind. It wasn't like we said, I'm going to be on, like ESPN was in its still relative infancy when we would have been in high school. It was obviously prominent, but it wasn't the monster that it is today. So I don't know if any of us could have sat there and said, I'm going to do that, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do this. I just knew I wanted to work in sports media, even though I started on the PR side, which was an odd transition. But there's, on the way to doing this, there are elements to this that nobody can prepare you for. And that's like any job, but especially this in terms of soul crushing. There's no money in it, but you got to do it to do it. Do you remember any of those assignments that you took that you had thoughts of, man, why am I doing this?
Hold on. I got to answer this one first because it's Adam's, not mine.
I want to hear that.
I go down to Evansville to visit Adam one time. I'm in Bloomington, like half going to college, half not. So I go down to Evansville one weekend and Adam says, well, I got this broadcast I got to do on like Friday night or Saturday night. I said, okay. So he's got a couple buddies with him that ran cameras for him and everything. They're good dudes. So we get in the car, and Adam, was it Henderson or Owensboro, Kentucky, where we drove?
Owensboro, Kentucky.
You did. It was like, it wasn't even like Kentucky professional wrestling. It was like, these guys were hoping to someday like ascend to the county fair championships. And I'll never forget. So we go to this thing, and Adam's like the ringleader of this thing. He's like the guy on the mic, the hype man for this local cable access wrestling channel. And I'll never forget the incredulous look of disbelief. It was like finding out that like Santa Claus, I mean, all these people, when they realized that they're wrestlers, that they were this angst against the other side. And they're like, wait a minute, these guys are all going in the same dressing room. And they're like hanging out and laughing with each other. Like, I'm not sure if this is real. And I mean, but Adam, it was awesome, right? It was so much fun. And I remember being so proud of the fact you were doing it, right? Because it was anything that we could do. That's the thing I think people today don't realize. Like anything that we could do, we were thrilled to do it. But I look back on it, Adam, and neither of us had any money. Neither of us had any, we had hope, but we didn't have, true feel for where we were going to go. But it didn't matter because it was fun and it was awesome. And man, we laughed nonstop that weekend.
Do you remember
I will tell you that. Go ahead, Mac.
Yeah, do you remember that job and specifically how much you got paid for it?
Absolutely. I remember that job. And so when I took my first job in Evansville, I was hired as a news photographer for the Fox affiliate at that time. They were the Fox affiliate, ended up becoming the CBS, but the Fox affiliate in Evansville, I was a news photographer and I was going to be a part-time sports reporter. And one day the sports director, it was a one-man sports team, basically, other than when I might go out on Friday nights and shoot some high school football and maybe do a stand-up. The sports director called in sick, and the news director had never seen me on the air. And I just went to him. I heard the phone conversation in the newsroom, and I'm like, he's sick. He's not coming in. Who's going to do sports? I'm going to volunteer, and I did. And that night I did the sports. The next day, there were all these people in the office that didn't even know who I was. I mean, they were like, who the heck is this guy we put on TV to do sports, And so the next day they came to me and said, we're starting this low power TV station that is going to be focused on local sports. And honestly, I thought I had hit the Powerball. I'm like, you can't make this up. And so with that, I started doing all kinds of local sports, high school soccer, high school football, basketball, baseball, low level college stuff. And what would happen is our salespeople would go out and they would sell programming time. And they sold it to this professional wrestling operation. And I had to go do that. And, I was like Mikey, Mikey will eat anything. Adam will do anything. Just tell. And so, and I was their best friend because I was getting paid $5 an hour, and I was literally the face of the franchise. Adam, but I would do anything.
I remember, Adam. I remember this vividly. When you left Evansville, WEVV, I think is where you were.
Yep.
And when you left there, you called me because I was still in Bloomington at the time. And I mean, this is one of those things like grandiose plans. I probably had zero chance at it, but you called me or I called you or whatever to strategize about me trying to send a tape to try to get that job, right? To take that. And I'll never forget you saying to me, I said, because my sister, I went to my sister and I said, look, I might not finish school because if this job opens up. And my sister said, well, mom and dad are going to want to know what kind of money you're making if you're going to leave school. And I said, well, Adam told me that they pay for your meals when you go on the road and everything. And so with that, I might make $22,000. And my sister's like, well, you got to take a hard look at that. That was in 1990, probably 5 or 6, something like that.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. And listen, like you said, Adam, I mean, we didn't care. And I know that we had the benefit and the blessing of, a safety umbrella underneath us, right? Of people that were going to back us up. And you had, obviously your parents and your Uncle Mike that lived down there. And, you had and I had the same supporting cast. So, but the reality is though, it wasn't about money to us in those years. It was just about opportunity. And it was about chasing that high of thinking that we were actually putting one foot in front of the other and just moving along. And I just, sometimes I have to remind myself of the innocence of that. Now today, I mean, I don't worry about stuff like I did 5 years ago, but now today I just have to remind myself of how, I mean, guys, look at this, right? Like, to your point, Mac, 1991, the three of us, there's no way we envision that we'd be sitting here doing this. And here we are. So, I think it's important for us sometimes to have that perspective.
I remember when there was jobs I took. My first job out of college was $490 a month. I was an intern at Southwest Missouri State and its athletic department. And it didn't faze me. I don't know. And I honestly, you're 22, but I still think sometimes, and you kind of alluded to it, Adam, you obviously did it. If you're going to make it in these kinds of businesses, entertainment, anything along those lines, monies can't matter that much in the beginning. It can't, because you're just not going to make anything. And I remember when I decided to make the jump from athletics, on the PR side, communication side, and I went over to where I am now. I remember I would take anything that paid me $50, anything. I remember one time I covered a girls' high school cross country meet. I know we would never cover it today, the opportunity that would never exist today. But I was like, yeah, I'll drive out there and go do it. Okay. And the other one was a women's amateur judo meet in a hotel ballroom. I went and covered that because I think it paid me like $75. It was on a Saturday. And the part that I was, and I know it, and it's one of the reasons why, and I've taught classes at TCU and SMU, and I told students all the time this: if you're okay with not making any money, you can last a hell of a long time. But at some point, like, I had no concept of what any of that was until I started to try to take girls out. And then that hit me like a 2x4 in the face.
See, Matt, that's the thing. You don't take the girls out. You ride the cheerleader bus. You just ride the cheerleader bus all the time, and it's free.
Did you guys, either one of you have, because I don't think, I really haven't, did either one of you along this way think, well, okay, I'm going to do something else. I'll go be, I'll be a sales rep or something along those lines. I'll go work in communications, marketing, or whatever. Did either one of you have that conversation with yourself or with a loved one?
When I was working in TV in Evansville, I decided that I was going to get out of local television. And I actually went to work. This would have been like spring of 2000. I went to work, it was closer to Labor Day. So summer of 2000, I went to work for a radio station doing sales. But the component of that was, in addition to doing sales, I could do some of their sports play-by-play and maintain a relationship on the air. And it was around that same time that I got my audition for MRN. And so that timing just worked out to be perfect, that I could do the sales and have the flexibility to do the play-by-play on the weekends. And I had a boss, the general manager of the radio station, who endorsed that and really supported me. I think he kind of knew this is an immature move by Adam because he thinks he wants to get out, but that's really not where his passion is. So he kind of supported me on the sales side, even though he probably knew Adam's not going to be a sales guy. Eventually, he's going to work his way back into being an on-air person, and he had a way better vision for my future than I did. But I was pretty close. If I hadn't had the right people around me, I was close just to going and making a normal living doing sales and maybe doing some play-by-play from time to time.
I remember.
Jake, did you ever think? Go ahead, Jake. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was going to say, when I mentioned earlier about getting the message on the answering machine, what I didn't say in that is, I had written it out and I was starting to get heat from my parents and, like, what are we doing? And Ed, like, what are we doing here? And so I just had written it out. And I felt like I'd stretch it as long as I could. And I was finally starting to hit that glass ceiling. And when I got home and saw that answering machine message from Fox Sports Net about the job in St. Louis, in my hand I'd gotten a job application from the O'Charlie's at 62nd and Keystone. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go wait tables and just try to make money that way and see if something opens up. And I think sales was also, my dad was in sales. So I had contemplated whether or not going into like steel sales like my dad had done. Maybe that's what I needed to do. And it wasn't because I didn't believe I could do it. It's because I didn't believe there was opportunity for me to do it. And, I had the fortune of being able to have that supporting cast to keep me afloat until things finally did open up for me. I
have kicked it around a couple times. And obviously I'm in a medium that's in a far more vulnerable state than, you guys. Although, Jake, I say that, Jake, you got laid off by a radio station, though, even though you had good numbers. I remember I had covered the Texas Rangers as a beat reporter, the Dallas Stars as a beat reporter, and the guy who owned both of those clubs liked me. And at one point he offered me a job to work in the Rangers front office. I don't think I've ever talked about that. Not that anybody cares, but he offered me a job, and I could have gone. And every now and then you do see members of media who jump over and work with the teams or anything along those lines. Adam, I'm sure you've seen it in auto racing. Jake, you too. And I was going to do it until I called a friend of mine who worked in baseball. And I said, I don't really know if I want that Major League schedule. Major League Baseball schedule is no joke. I mean, that's a lifestyle. These jobs are a lifestyle, but a Major League Baseball schedule is a tremendous commitment. And he said, they've told you one thing. He said, but you've covered those games. You know how this works. And I couldn't do it. So I had other moments where I've looked around and I've talked to some people about opportunities, but I just figured as long as I can do this, and the schedule, and Adam, I don't know if you can speak to this or not, because you're committed to an auto racing schedule, which is a big commitment. The schedule with a daughter for me has worked out spectacularly well, and that's what is. And I still love what I do. I don't want to say that I don't, but that's a big reason why I really haven't looked that hard elsewhere. And I don't know about you guys. I can't imagine doing anything else. I'm sure I can. I'm not dumb. But I don't know if you guys have ever thought, I don't even know what the hell else would I do.
I got to be honest with you. Right now, I don't know. I mean, I feel like that when you're young, at least you have youth on your side. If you want to make a move now north of 50, I'm like, who the hell would want me? And what am I even qualified to do? What would I hang my hat on? And it would probably have to be something in the industry where you just have a relationship and someone says, we like this guy and we'll teach him enough that he can help us out. But you talk about the schedule thing. We had a pretty pivotal move in like 2011. I had been traveling quite a bit. We still lived in Evansville, and I was traveling the circuit, and our kids were young. And so I was missing a decent amount at an age when it's hard to miss. You go away for 3 or 4 days and your kids have, changed dramatically when you get home. And that was hard. That was hard because my priority has always been at home. I am thankful for the career I have and the opportunities that have been presented to me, but it has always been a means to support, I've never really felt like this is my thing. I've always, my priorities have always been at home. And so in 2011, the entire year I was coming from Evansville to Charlotte to do a studio show. Every weekend I would leave on Thursday evening and I would be in Charlotte all weekend and fly home Sunday night. And there was give and take with that. I got to be a part of a lot of things during the week that most people couldn't, but I missed everything on the weekends. And somewhere in that year, Speed and Fox came to me and said, what do you think about moving to Charlotte? And we decided to do that. And that was a game changer because I had a lot of home games where before I had no home games. And really the way my career and all of that schedule has unfolded since that time has allowed me to have more time with my family than I ever could have imagined in the industry we are in. And I still miss things, as we all do, but not near at the magnitude that I would have if we were still, in Indiana. So the schedule is challenging and there's commitment, but I would also say that it's worked out probably as good as it could have for me. And that is what's kept me in it probably over the long haul, is that, you can manage that work-life balance.
Okay, because this interview went a little long, I've decided to split this episode into 2 episodes so you can catch the next one next week. See you then.
This is a Stolen Water Media production.